On this beautiful late winter's day, I'm preparing to plant what I consider the king of legumes, and that's the broad bean, or the fava bean. Now, broad beans are something that you either love or you hate. Personally, I love them, but I want to talk a little about options to eat them, even if you don't like them, that you can still enjoy them, and also why I plant them at this time of the year and the choice of variety that I'm making. Last year I grew a red flowering variety of broad bean. I don't know what actually it's called. It has a nice green bean, a very compact shell. It crops really well. It was excellent and very decorative, but it doesn't have the strength of flavour that I, being a broad bean lover, really look for. Now, it's an option for those of you that don't like broad beans, is to grow these, and you will find that they are not as strong, if the strong flavour is what you don't like. But this year I'm going back to growing the stronger flavoured variety, and I'm choosing Coles Dwarf. So I'm going to put some of those in. Now, a lot of people plant broad beans in the autumn, before the winter starts. And one of the reasons they do this is because over winter the ground is simply too wet to work and to plant things, and also growth slows right down. The reason I prefer to plant now is because when you plant in autumn, the beans actually grow quite high and will produce flowers, but they don't actually set any pods until the spring comes. Now, what it means being so high is they're very subject then to wind. You've got to do a lot of staking to keep them from falling over. So what I find is if I plant this time of the year in late winter, when the ground is beginning to warm that little bit and things are beginning to move, is they will go straight and grow very quickly, and when the flowers start to come they will immediately begin to set beans. They won't actually grow as tall, but they will still produce as many beans, and in terms of cropping time they will only be at the most 2 weeks later. Now, I'm able to do this because I have covered this ground with plastic. If I hadn't done that, it would be too wet and I couldn't get in there to work. So this is the way I've prepared the ground, covered it up so it isn't wet, and now I can simply run a couple of rows with the wheel hoe, put my broad beans in, and they're ready to go. Now, for those of you again that don't like broad beans, one of the ways to eat them that I have found people that don't like broad beans can actually eat broad beans and not even know they're doing it, is to make them into hummus. Make broad bean hummus by simply cooking some broad beans. I've added a little broccoli here, adding some garlic, some apple cider vinegar, a good dollop of soy sauce. Now I'll put the recipe in the description below for you. A little olive oil, and some tahini. Now, the amount of tahini you use depends on how you like it to taste, and then process well until nice and smooth, and then enjoy. Another way that you can get food from broad beans is to eat the tip out of the top of the plant. Now, taking the tip out encourages growth so that it branches and produces more beans, and the tip is quite tasty to eat. Strangely, my wife, who doesn't like broad beans, actually enjoys eating these plant tips. I have added just a light sprinkling of blood and bone. You don't need to fertilise broad beans heavily because they actually have the nitrogen fixing nodules on the roots, and so they will create their own. So just a light sprinkling to get them started is all they need. So it's time to get the seed in. I plant them roughly about a hand span apart, gives them a bit of space to develop. So with a quick cover with the wheel hoe, they will be ready to go. We'll get plenty of rain still in the winter to water them in, and the ground is beginning to warm, the flowers are starting to come, the daffodils, so it won't take long for them to come out of the ground now and be ready for a nice harvest, probably in late December.